things off. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, April 4th, 2024 Watertown City Board of Adjustment meeting. Brandy, can you help with the roll call?
Yes, Culhane.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Dolly.
Here.
Brink.
Here.
Oletsky. Here. Kays.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
And Dargits, Johnson, and Spire are absent. We have a quorum for Board of Adjustment. For a variance, it needs to be a 2/3 vote, so there will need to be 5 in the affirmative for a passing variance.
Thank you, Brandy. Moving on to item 3 is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Brink,
Second.
second by Culhane. Any comments on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. We'll move on to item 4A on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes from the March 21st meeting. Need a motion?
Second.
Motion by Kays and a second by Brink. Any comments or discussion on those minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those are approved. Moving on to item 5A on the regular agenda is board consideration of a variance request, and I'll have Brandy you take us through that.
All right, thank you, Blake. So this is a variance request at the property addressed 170 North Lake Drive. The applicant and owner is Neil Tapio, and this is a variance for an addition. Let me pull up the, we'll pull up the property on GIS here first, just so you can see. So the variance request is for the side yard on the east, kind of southeast side of the structure. This property is located, obviously, Lake Kempesca to the south, and then Highway 20 to the north. And so his desire is to build an attached garage addition. And with how the structure is currently angled against the property line, so currently the structure is about 3.9 feet off of the east property line. And his request is for a 4.5-foot side yard setback. And obviously the reason for the enlargement of the side yard setback from the 3.9 to the 4.5 is that angled structure against the lot line. So in the R1 single family residential district, a 9-foot side yard setback is required. His reasoning, with this is how the existing structure is situated today for the request, and then the need for remodeling the structure, and then actually making the garage into living space, and then putting the garage then further to the north. And sorry, it's so it's so angled that it's saying cardinal directions is a little difficult, but to be precise. But so then with the attached garage, then the garage door would open to the west, and then so then the garage is parallel to Highway 20, so we're not running into issues of the 20-foot driveway spacing for parking vehicles and whatnot. And then so that one though does not need that. The front yard does not need a variance because it is meeting the 9-foot requirement when you're entering parallel. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
So Brandy, on this view here, it does list 2 different options for the driveway, but we're considering option 2 in this request, right?
I believe so. Yes. Yep.
Because option 1 would have been
Yep.
entering the garage from the road directly, and that does require a greater setback in that case.
Yep. Yep. And I confirmed that with the applicant, and then that was his direction. Anyway, it was just decided then after the discussion and after he submitted the exhibit. So.
Okay. Yes.
I'm on the line now.
And Neil, they haven't opened the public hearing yet. So then once they do that, then
Oh, okay.
that'll be your time to speak.
Yep, roger that.
Thanks.
And I will open the public hearing, but before I do, I'm going to pass it over to the commissioner here with a question.
Okay, it says here that the property is within a 100-year floodplain. And then the second sentence, it said if the remodel project costs more than 50% of the assessed value of the property. Now, Mr. Tapio, this is all public record. His building assessment is 163,879. So if this project costs more than, let's round it to 84,000, he's going to have to raise the whole property up, right?
Correct. So he actually, and for substantial improvement, you can do not an assessed value, you can do the market value appraised value.
But it says right here, assessed value.
Couldn't that be, that can be like from the county assessment
That's
or
what I-
the
That's what I
appraised,
thought was the
or-
county assessment.
or a market rate appraisal for substantial improvement. So I was using assessed broadly to
Did
just,
you include the lot value on
Nope.
that, or just the,
Structure.
just the
just the
structure.
structure? Okay.
So he would have to lift the house as well as the garage, new garage.
Unless, and so I guess I didn't mention this in my staff report as well. I referenced 192 North Lake Drive, which is just, 5 houses down to the west. When that project came through, so they did not have to raise the house because there are other options with floodplain regulations that I really would like to administer as staff when he would apply for the building permit. But just with the question being asked, then he could do a lateral expansion where just the new addition is being, that is being raised or flood proofed. And then, but for the entire remodel, that's where, like, we're gonna get into that 50% because he's doing work to the existing structure as well. So there's a lot of options when it comes to the floodplain regulations, but it is all of those things will need to be looked at.
So
That's
what is
something-
he saying is the assessed value then for the building?
We haven't gotten into that yet, because that will come at building permit issuance.
Right.
Yep, yep.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Brandy, could you turn on the digital ortho quad again so I could see the picture?
Digital ortho quad.
That's what it's called.
Hey.
So basically, when the garage addition would be built closer on the existing driving pad is where the garage is going to be constructed. And it's going to be 9 feet off of the right-of-way, which is the highway. And that's going to butt up against the other neighbor. His garage is going to be adjacent to that too. So is that going to cause any issues with how the neighbor gets in and out of his property, being able to see around that garage?
Good question.
Then, I mean,
If I'm backing out and I'm the neighbor to the south there, and I'm backing out, and granted, there's about 12 foot between the edge of the curb line and the driving lane, and then I've got a 20-foot clearance from a sidewall of 10 feet. That to me is my biggest concern with this whole thing, is that it's going to be, potentially difficult for the neighbor to access his own property without having to be very careful.
If we were to pull the 25-foot clear view triangle off of the neighbor's driveway there where it meets the right-of-way,
Yeah, what would that look like? I guess that's something I'm curious.
I might be pulling this. Oops, whoa.
because we'd want to pull it off of what I guess would be the westerly most portion of their driveway.
Oh, you want to do it, okay.
Yeah, and go 25 foot in and then 25 foot back over.
Okay, so we're about here, and then we'll see. Hold on, that's not gonna give us what we want.
No, we got to go the other direction.
Okay. Sorry, but that is 25 feet.
Yeah.
So at least for an idea, then now let's go,
So if you go on that property
At-
line, yeah, right
so
there,
10 feet.
10 feet. Okay. And it's going to be even slightly less than that because we're going to be 5 feet in from the property line. So we should be right at the safe.
Right,
safe
that
area.
was my curiosity was. what
No,
that
it's a
was
very
all.
good question.
Chair,
Yes, Ms. Ford.
Brandy, I'm confused a little bit by this whole project, but the first thing I'm confused about is by calling where the driveway is the front yard. That's by ordinance, the backyard. The front yard is the water side of this property.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
And so what are exactly the setback requirements for the backyard in R1?
Okay, yes, good clarification, Diana. I am sorry about that. I was focused more so just because we're not asking for a variance to any other yard other than the side yard. But you are right. So at the lake, the front yard is on the side that's adjacent to the lake. And then the other yard that is adjacent to the right-of-way, which is typically a front yard, is the rear yard. And so there's a 25-foot setback, but then that is where this applies, because if this were in a typical R1 residential district, people could not put the garage, even if it were entering parallel, they couldn't put their garage within the front yard. It's only when it's a rear yard. So that's why this is appropriate. And thank you for that clarification.
And the rear yard specifically is where we have this caveat of if you enter the garage parallel to the roadway, to the right-of-way, that side yard, or that rear yard setback requirement moves from 25 feet to 9 feet in front of that garage, right?
Yep.
And then also, Brandy, so if this is approved and that garage is added on, so it looked to me like there was only going to be 9 feet of parking in front of the garage door to the roadway?
No.
No.
No, there would be no parking allowed in front of the garage there. They'd have to switch their driveway to access it parallel with the roadway. So it was a little confusing there because it lists two options on the plan, but option 1 is not in consideration and would not be approved. We would be looking only at option 2 here.
All right, I'm sorry, I misunderstood that at the beginning. So we're looking at option 2, and how much of the green space does that take out on the road side of that house there?
And that's another thing, Diana, that he only needs 2 off-street parking stalls for the residents, which obviously then he has the garage as well. So as long as he has 2, then the rest of the front yard has to be dedicated to grass. So like this, but this isn't, we're not approving like this, anything else that he's asking for or that he's showing other than the variance itself. Because like this area for maneuvering and whatnot, we'll have to look at that if it's, so you can have required driveways and sidewalk in the front or in the rear yard. But then the rest of it has to be devoted to grass.
Thank you.
At this time, I will open the public hearing. Anybody here to speak on behalf or against?
Mr. Tapio, I think.
I think the applicant is online.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. This is Neil Tapio. I'm the owner of 170 North Lake Drive. I'm a business owner here in town. I was a former senator for this area several years ago. I purchased this property last June, knowing that there was some issues with the property. The entire house has sunken footings and around the house, and I went to level out the footings. I've raised the house about 1.5 inches, but the deepest area of sunken footings was about 2.5 inches, and so I've raised the house and leveled the back side of the house. The reason for this discussion is I got to the front of the house at the corner of the garage where the garage bumps out, and there's a 3 inches of drop from the corner of the garage into the wall between the house and the garage. And there's no way to lift that that wall without taking the whole garage floor out, as well as the roof off. It's a major, major deal. So just to get that leveled is a Blackburn gave $139,000 of a price just to level the house before I can remodel it. I've got about $30,000 into it right now, and I ended up in a situation where I can't fix the house anymore. So I have to tear down the garage and take out the garage floor in order to level that side of the house. This is a 1,300 square foot home, and as you know, if you've dealt with properties at the lake, there was no plastic or anything on the ground, and it's got a heavy mold and mildew smell. So I need to do a lot of remediation. So my question is, I can destroy that, and I can remove the house or tear it down, and I have a lot that's worth $600,000, or that I have $600 and some thousand into, or I can try to create a better living space for this lot. And so my proposal was to be able to take the garage and move it out to the road. And I don't want to move it too close because there's a power line that goes adjacent to the road on the edge of the road, the property line. And so I needed to stay as far back as possible, but to put a 16-foot garage door with coming in from the side, and I want to have 24 feet of garage, I have to, it's very limiting in how I can get out of that garage and not hit the bump out on the left side of the house towards the road, if that makes sense. And so I came and talked to Brandy and Carla and said, hey, what are my options? And I'm in the process of designing a home, and, we've got, $1,500 to $2,000 into already a project of architect's fees, trying to come up with a plan. And I thought I better get a variance because I know the only way for this garage to work out there is to get a variance on the side setback. And so trying to figure out how to get out of that garage, I can't move it out of that setback because the inside lane you wouldn't be able to get out of your garage. So that's my limitation, that's my handicap, or hardship, I guess is what you would call it. So I have to push it as far out. And then I'd like to create a living space where the current garage is, so that I have a home that is a little bit larger. 1,300 square feet is, it's a 3-bedroom, pseudo 2-bath, but it's very small, and I'd like to be able to increase that. So that's kind of the proposal. I'm open to suggestions, but it's somewhat limiting because it's a narrow lot from front to back. There's very little backyard. I don't want to tear up a lot of my lakeside yard, and I'm limited where else I can build. So I basically got $600,000 worth of a lot that isn't worth $600,000. So just trying to figure out what my options are. I appreciate your support in allowing a side entry garage as far away from as I can get it from those overhead lines. I just don't want to have a home that close to it. To address your point of getting in and out of the garage for the neighbor, I showed him this plan, and they were incredibly in favor of having a nicer home beside them. And whatever they could do, they said they would be supportive. So if I would need to get letters or something, they would be very happy to help. They would like to have a windbreak, to be honest with you, for their driveway in and out of their house as well. I showed you the other some satellite images where there's the 3 doors down. They're 8 feet from the road to the house, and I'd like to have 10, and that would be including an overhang. So you'd really have 12 feet of visibility to be able to see as you're backing out. And then that first lane of that road, if you remember, is a non-driving lane. It's more of a bike lane or a bike path type of a lane. So it's a pretty safe, getting in and out of that isn't a real problem. I don't foresee any problems there.
Thank you,
For
Mr.
instance,
Tapia.
on 158, if you look at the satellite
Yeah.
imagery, you have 8 feet between the house and the property or the road. But
Yep.
they have a lot of shrubs and trees, and so they have almost zero visibility to be able to back out. But they do back out into that extra lane, and that's quite safe.
Yeah, sorry, I was there and looked at it, and then I was just moving down the way. So, yeah, this is the one he's referring to, 158.
Yep. And we do have some others around the lake that are very similarly structured with that.
And especially these properties on Highway 20, they are very narrow.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Case?
So Brandy, the existing structure is 3.9 feet off of the property line currently. Was a variance granted in the past by the city to allow that to be that close?
Not that we found.
But a building permit was issued. Did we find the original building permit for that structure that showed it was 3.9 feet?
No, I'm assuming that this was built in the
Predates.
county.
Well, yeah, I'm guessing it would probably predated the annexation into the city. So, thank you.
Is there any other questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Tapio. Is there anybody else to speak in the public?
Thank you.
Last chance. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Conversation with the board?
Motion to approve to get into discussions, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion by Mr. Case. Second by Colhane. Discussion on this item?
My concern from the very beginning was just whether or not there was going to be enough vision clearance for the adjoining property to be able to back in and out of their garage. And based upon the testimony of Mr. Tapio, he has said that he's talked to the neighbor. They don't seem to object with what's going on. I don't think it's actually going to be built further off the property line than it currently is. We all know that the R1 district how it's applied to the lake is never an easy fit. And I don't have any objections to what they're proposing to do.
I think the other consideration specific to the variance request, which is side yard here, is it's not exacerbating the existing side yard setback. In fact, it's actually a little bit less as the angle of the building projects out. We've certainly seen others that are in a similar vein to this around the lake.
This is Ford.
Yes, Ms. Ford?
Yes, that's all true. We do have part of our ordinance that states noncompliance in neighboring lands and structures isn't considered grounds for approving a variance. And we also talk about reasonable use of the property. And reasonable use could possibly include not adding the garage, since they're going to remodel the existing garage, fix that and keep it the garage without adding on and requiring this variance.
Any other comments from the board? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
All right, Hanson,
No.
Kays,
Yes.
Oletsky,
This is a really tough one. I can see why you'd want it. I'm going to say yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Dolly,
Yes.
Ford,
No.
Colhane.
Yes.
We have 5 yes, 2 no, so that motion will pass.
Now, Brandy, on this one here, that if it does come, if he says this is what the assessed value or appraised value is, and all of these improvements come over half, then what happens?
Then he has to elevate it so he can flood-proof it, which you can't really for residential, relocate, elevate, or demolish for substantial improvement.
So
Fred.
who will figure that out? You'll figure it out at,
Yep,
Okay.
so when he applies for his building permit, then we'll get all that information. And like he said, I believe that he was planning on raising it, so, yeah, we'll evaluate all of that, but we have not, since he first needed to figure out what the building plan was going to be.
Thanks, Brandy. Move on to item 6 as open public comment. I don't believe we had anybody signed up to speak at this point in time.
Nope.
So we'll move on to any new business.
None that I have.
How about old business?
Nope.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, for
The Plan Commission, we'll do that right after we adjourn. So I'll take a motion from the board to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned as the Board of Adjustment. We'll reconvene here momentarily as Plan Commission.